I'm here with Guy Wolff.
I'm here.
And I thought it would be great to follow up last week's video with a video about actually making a flower pot.
And the process. I mean, so when Rajiv comes, we work a lot on sort of saying, okay, the gesture that this particular pot works this way. So at different moments, we sort of are struggling to learn the dance of a new shape. Today we're going to be working on, there was a German sculptor, folk potter artist in the 1870s in Winchester, Vermont, and Thurmont, Maryland, and somewhere else too. But his name was Anthony Baecher, if you spelled it out. If you talked to somebody from Munich, they would say, Nein, Baecher. So
Baecher.
This beautiful girl came and said that, and I said, I can't do that. I can't do that. But anyway, Anthony Baecher made a pot with a double rim that he split and then pinched together. And in fact, years later, we were looking at pots from Isabel Stewart Gardner Museum. Her mother-in-law had the same split rim, and in their archives it said, from Venice, Italy. So it seems to be something that happened a lot of places. There was a very interesting folk potter that came to Cornwall, Connecticut, and he did a split rim with a certain amount of fussing with too. But anyway, just at the beginning of all this, so the wheel goes around in a circle. And what you're doing is you're sort of pushing against the clay in one direction and you're pulling back in the other, which is what gets the thing into the middle of the wheel. Now, a lot of students sort of think the wheel should be going really fast. And the odd thing is, the slower the wheel is going, the more powerful the torque is in what you do. You have to be a little steadier if the wheel is going very slow. In fact, there was a moment where I lent Rajiv a wheel that wasn't working very well. And as the summer went on, it got slower and slower. And it actually was pretty good for, that helped you a little bit.
Oh, a lot. I mean, it got to the point where sometimes it would go so slow and then just stop. And there was nothing to do to fix it. So I learned to just kind of work with it. And the guy has been telling me in recent years, slow it down. And this extremely slow wheel, it did teach me things.
So we go all the way down the wheel head because we're making a flower pot. And you make the floor.
So you make a hole.
You make a hole and then you pull out a piece of clay at between, I don't know, 1/4 and 3/8 thick. I don't know, something.
For the floor of the pot?
Yeah. Now, this is going to have a fat rim that's going to be doing something. So the big trick for a lot of shapes is to leave enough material to do the ornamentation you're going to do at the top. So look at all that clay I'm leaving. Now I brought up the pot a little bit thinner towards the bottom, so it's complaining.
So it's thick up here, and this is what took me so long to learn how to do, because for years and years and years of throwing, the instinct was pull it up, and then it just gets super thin at the top. Like it's like it's a point at the top.
Yeah.
And this was kind of like the opposite. So it was.
So what's going to happen here is we're going to take this top rim and we're splitting it. Now you notice the pot's wiggling a little bit underneath from the torque of doing that. So I'm going to point one part of that down and the other part sort of out. So once you've done that sort of thing, then you can go ahead and bring up the rest of the material into the wall, because it's all the way down, it's jiggling around. Now you notice now what's so cool here is this tool is the thing that kind of gives nuance. So this particular pot is going to have a bead at the bottom, and then it's going to go up in an arch all the way, and then look at this outside edge, which is going to have this sort of funny, fancy thing at the end. So this is kind of almost there. I'm going to add a bead at the bottom now.
This is what I find so hard to do.
So there's a bead down here. It's all hard to do and it's all really easy. The old-time potters loved saying, the first 1,000 are the hardest. And that would be explaining about each shape. So the first 1,000 of each shape you do are harder. Now, this particular pot, because of the way the arch is going up, Mr. Baecher put a little bit of a... Potters put lines on somewhere on the pot, and they really are kind of as if you had a piece of poetry that went la 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 la, comma, la 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 la. So this is going up, halfway up. It wants a little bit of a marking. So that's there. And before we pick the pot up, we go down to the bottom and make sure it's dry. If I was a good potter, there wouldn't be any water in there in the first place. But okay, so I have this bottom rim going down, and this top rim wants to come out and sort of point up. Well, that isn't the way it's going to end, but for doing the next gesture, having this go up and this going down, when you pinch it together, it makes an opposing shape. The other thing is I'm pinching two pieces of clay together. There cannot be any liquid in between where this pinch is going on.
So no water sitting in there?
If there's any water in there, there isn't the chance for the clay to bond together. So that's why things split. So you wouldn't have imagined that this rim would have happened when you first saw that shape. So it's pretty great that you can get that out of a shape. And it's what gives harmony to form, is when something kind of has a studied, what would you say? It's sort of a plan. There's an architectural plan going on. And it takes a long time to sort of get how things... So I'm going to do this same shape and just do a quarter rim on it just to show the difference. So this is, in Portugal, they had these wonderful things that you put on the inside. Now that one doesn't fit, but it's for the show. It kind of, so this stabilizes the pot when you pick it up, and I call that a Portuguese lifter. This pot didn't really need that, but let's put it over here. So now I'm going to do the same thing of doing an arch pot, but I'm going to do a different kind of rim. So this is just, in the pottery world, you lift up the clay to just sort of make sure that it's, when somebody goes running, you see them stretching beforehand. That's kind of the same activity. Now this is the moment you have to make sure that it's not going too fast. So all of this is sort of a conversation about the laws of architecture. So we're going to grab on some clay at the bottom. I'm pushing in with one hand, I'm pushing out with the upper hand that's pushing the clay in the way of the movement. And this time, instead of splitting it, I'm making a semi-dome on the top. And this shape opposes what's going on in the arch in the bottom part. So the
bottom is going like this, and the top is going like this. It's like this and this.
We did a rim very much like this for one of the local estates around here.
That's already a beautiful shape.
Yeah, and if you were looking at a 12th century pot from England, it would just be like that. They wouldn't refine the outer shape. When you get into the Renaissance, that's when you start getting this kind of more compressing the line and pulling it out. So here we have again, just the simplistic thing of, you know, an arch with the top. Now, because of that it's kind of refined, I'm just going to take a little, this is actually the thing that you would, with a peanut, you know, for picking it open. But it just makes a very nice clean up of the bead. And I'm going to add a second line to turn this into kind of a refined bottom. And then, now I could just leave that alone, or I could put a bead on the inside of it and add fine dent, or I could add a rope. What do you want?
Where could you add the rope?
The whole thing.
Oh, let's put a dent on the top.
Okay, so at that point, then you decide where you put the dent. And because you want this flange to still talk about the arch coming up and the flange is going down. So this is basically a peanut butter jar lid that has lots of little lines in it. And I'm just going to go in and do a little bit of what in architectural terms would be fine dent.
Beautiful. You'd never know that was a peanut butter lid.
Yeah. Why not? So that's, and I will have a certain kind of, you know, gardener come and say, I want simplicity. So this, they'll go for this. And somebody else will say, didn't one of those nice billionaire ladies in Wilmington, Delaware, buy an antique one of those? Could you make me one like that? I need to get a rope. Oh, it's right here. So we're staying on a theme here. The next one I'm going to do is basically the same thing again, but I'm going to change the bottom of it, which will transform the pot into something utterly different. So again, this is about architecture. And all of these are from the simplest motion of all, which is doing an arch. If you were talking about sort of the, you know, in photography, you would talk about light and darkness. In pottery, making forms, there's basically three parts of the language. There's making an arch, a straight, or the opposite of an arch is a dome. So if you had a big bulbous round balloon pot, once you start blowing it up into a round thing, you can't move it around anymore. Domes are very strong, but they don't like to be moved.
So the arch is a pot that goes like this.
Yeah.
A dome is a pot that would go like
Goes
this.
like that.
And the straight is straight.
Yep. Arches, straights, and domes. So what we're doing here is we're going to make, in the pot itself, it's nothing but an arch. And at the very end, I'm going to compress near the bottom to make what's called a colonnade foot. Makes a nice round thing at the bottom of the pot. Now, because I'm doing that, I'm going to change this top rim just a little bit and turn it into a flange, which is kind of neoclassical. But the pot's still going to be an arch all the way up. Again, the lower hand is pushing in, and the hand on the inside of the pot is pushing out. And a lot of times the student doesn't get that you're pushing out just as hard as you're pushing in. It's the activity of those two pressures that makes the clay move. We're back to making that arch, and we're going to point it right at that rim, and the rim is going to oppose it. It's going to say stop. But this time I'm going to make the outside at the top a little bit wider because of what's going to happen at the bottom. Now this one, right near the bottom, is going to have one of those punctuations. And this particular punctuation is done with a drawer pull that has dots on it. And I'm looking. Well, I'm going to have to use this one because I can't see.
I'll go get this one.
Okay. We like the one. Restoration Hardware, when they were going, they had this really good drawer pull. And it has dots on the side. So I'm just right near the bottom. I'm going to make a line with that, which will be sort of a dot. Now, utterly, this looks pretty much like what we've already done already. But I'm going to, at about 1 inch above the bottom, push in. And it's going to completely transform the shape of the pot. And it's basically an architectural trick. So if I put this clay at the bottom under compression, do I want to use this? I don't know. I don't usually use a sponge there, but I'm just going to try it. So I'm pushing in. I'm not doing anything else than just pushing in.
Wow.
And see how that turns that into a nice dome at the bottom. So, and then to finish, this one has a little bit of fine dent at the top rim. So this is, basically a neoclassical urn. At this shop, we call this a loving cup because there's a really nice one from the Nottingham Museum of a pot made in Denby in 1690 that years ago, I had a woman from Brides magazine say, what kind of flower pot's romantic? And I said, well, I don't know about a romantic flower pot, but there was a fellow who had a loving cup made for his bride in 1690, and it says, this and the giver are thine forever. So let's make a flower pot like that. I've been making it ever since for weddings in June. But so these 3 pots are basically starting with the same gesture. And, I would say this is a little bit more folk pottery. It's not quite as elegant, but it's a lot of fun. This would be great for an amaryllis bulb. I mean, it's so simple, and then, it would just go up. And again, this would be great for what they call a standard, which is like a ball.
A topiary.
Topiary. Our friend Ken Saloti.
Oh, love Ken.
Yes.
So, I'm going to say that when I first started coming here, 15 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
2009. It looks so simple, especially something like this.
This is the hardest to do because there's no place to hide your mistake.
There's a Carter family song. There's no hiding place down here. And whenever a guy says you can't hide, I think of that song. So that it looks so simple. This when I started attempting things like this and thought, oh, well, I could move to this. It looked so simple to just push the bottom in, but there's so much in creating this elegant curve down here that it's not simple. It's so nuanced that it is actually very intricate.
Well, the thing that's so cool about watching Rajiv struggle and take on things, we did a batch of these, which you'll be seeing soon, and he was having a difficulty making this sort of sing at the bottom. So the way he fixed it was he left it sort of muddy, and then when he went to do the cleanup, he finished it up when it was a little drier.
Flipping it over.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Guy.
You're very welcome.
Talking about the finished flower pots and the tradition of 19th century flower pots was one thing, but to see it being made.
Well, the thing that's just so much fun to say here is each one of these, the gesture is completely a different personality. This thing by itself has a lot of stuff going on to make it sophisticated enough to be there. This one is kind of more elegant, and that one's kind of the most, showy and fun.
Yeah.
So if I was going to say to a student which one of these is the easiest to do, it would be the Baecher.
And I would have thought years ago that was the most complicated shape to make.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're so welcome.